Good afternoon. Welcome to the short lectures session. In the lost and found department, we have a touring, Kalangura. Silver tourings, the owner can claim it from me. Okay. Also, there's a stamp pad of Mr. Rajamani. If he's around, he can claim this from me. Just to remind you that we will have a public lecture at 5 p.m. delivered by our international president. 7:30 p.m. we will reassemble for a dance performance by Kalakshetra troupe. Thank you.
Dear President, dear brothers and sisters, it is an honor for me to announce two esteemed speakers today, experts on this subject. Dr. Haas from the Netherlands, whom we have all met already yesterday evening, and Dr. Nagesh from India. Mikil H was born into a theosophical family in Utrecht, the Netherlands. As a young boy, he often came to the International Theosophical Center at Naarden because his parents owned a small wooden cabin there. Later, he studied architecture at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. After working in Switzerland and Spain, he established himself as an independent architect in the Netherlands. He has been intensely occupied in all kinds of initiatives in the field of sustainable building. Has been an author and co-author of 16 books and is a much wanted speaker for courses and symposia in his own country and abroad. In 1990, he established the Dutch Institute of Building Biology and Ecology, NIBE, in Naarden. In 1997, he acquired his PhD at the Technical University of Delft, Eindhoven, with his thesis on an environmental classification model for building products and their impact on health and environment. He was also a university professor at the University of Delft, from which he is retired now. So let's listen to Dr. Mikil H on sustainability and spirituality.
Dear International President, Mr. Tim Boyd, and dear International Secretary, Marja Artema, thank you for the invitation to give a presentation on this stage about this subject. Dear sisters and brothers, here gathered in this theater and overseas on the live stream, and especially my lovely wife, who wasn't able to come here. It happens. I'm sorry. My presentation today is about sustainability and spirituality, a subject close to my heart and what I'm doing for nearly 40 years already. I'm that old. And the spiritual basis for the work I was able to present yesterday. It's very clear. Our home, our planet Gaia, is ill. We can observe that every day, far away from our beds, but sometimes also very dangerous nearby. Last month, just around the corner from here, and even we had it here on the estate. The Adyar River came very close to the headquarter building. I still have, again, not my last presentation. I'm sorry. The Adyar River came very close to the headquarter building, and I think we should think about how we go with these things. We all know, say, pray, universal invocation. That isn't there. This universal invocation starts with, Oh, hidden life, vibrant in every atom, we know it, and it ends at the end. May all who feel themselves as one with thee know they are therefore one with every other. Who is this every other? It's clear that are you and me. But are our younger brothers also meant? I think Dr. Annie Besant was clear about that according to this citation of her here. When we recognize that unity of all living things, then at once arises the question, how can we support this life of ours with least injury to the lives around us? How can we prevent our own life adding to the suffering of the world in which we live? These pictures of the flooding I showed were last month in Chennai, very near to us or our sisters and brothers living here. We can observe that climate change already takes place on a huge scale, and I assure you, this is only the beginning. In 2016, global warming will be just 1 degree. 1 degree Celsius. Some places will be faced with large-scale droughts. For instance, in the midst of the USA, California, in the midst of Africa, the Sahel zone, in parts of Southeast Asia, south of Europe, Middle East. The war in Syria is for important part caused by the droughts in Syria, because the people went to the cities, and there it starts with problems. These droughts will cause destructive fires. The weather changes also to the worse. With severe extremities, hurricanes reappear often and cause much more devastation than before. Heavy rains, as we encountered in Chennai last December, but also the rising of the sea level, will cause lots of floodings. All this is what nature is doing to us. But what are we doing to nature? I said already 35 years ago that it looks like we are in war with nature. Well, nature has taken up the challenge. I will give you something to think about. You see, nature is helping me. Is this? Yeah. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. Let's scale it to 46 years to make it easier to understand. We have been here for 4 hours. Our industrial revolution only began 1 minute ago in that same scale. Look what we did in that last 60 seconds to the Earth. We destroyed half of our forests. We poisoned our soils and waters. We made the Earth's temperature rise with 1 degree Celsius, which means large alterations in the average of weather conditions. We caused the sea level rise from 180 millimeters, half an inch. This is not sustainable behavior. We did that in the last 1 minute. This last 1 minute is about 150, 200 years in our time schedule. You get a little bit science, you get a little bit compassion from me. Now I start with some science. We recognize 4 environmental problems. The first one is depletion of raw materials, especially the rare earth elements. Rare earth elements we need for all new applications such as windmills, PV cells, flat screens for television or computer, laptops, mobiles and tablets, electrical cars, etc., etc. It was too quick, that one. You must have heard about the global footprint. Our way of living you can express in hectares of land which are needed to comply our needs. In the way in which the North Americans live, they need 4.16 planets. The way in which the average Indian people live, they need just half a planet. But you are rising your footprint very quick. Altogether, we need at this moment nearly 2 planets, but we have only 1. Earth's overshoot day is the calculated illustrative calendar date on which humanity's resources consumption for the year exceeds the Earth's capacity to generate those resources for that year. That means we live on credit. In 2015, Earth's overshoot day was on August 12. Every year it comes a little bit earlier. And as you know from your own finances, you can't stay living on credit. Once you have to pay with interest. We are destroying the Earth's surface, poison the land on which we grow crops where we need to live from. Our second environmental problem is pollution. Pollution to waters, to the soil, to the air. One of these polluters, the greenhouse gases, are directly causing the climate change. And climate change is nowadays very visible and therefore popular to talk about, as politicians do. What do you need to know about the greenhouse gases? I said you get some science, but afterwards you really get also compassion. Only 4% of the CO2 emissions are caused by humans because we use the fossil fuels. Only 4%. The rest, 96%, is a natural carbon dioxide cycle. From recordings who grows and decay by emitting. This natural cycle is called the short CO2 cycle. The problems caused the added 4% CO2 from the long cycle of fossil fuels. This CO2 was stored for millions of years and is now greatly accelerated, released within 150 to 200 years. I forgot to do that. Now you can read it also. But there are also lots of other types of pollution that we cause. Global warming, the greenhouse gas effect, ozone depletion potential, acidification, eutrophication, photochemical ozone, human toxicity, ecotoxicity, and water toxicity. And we are always talking about greenhouse gases. So we just are talking about a small part of all the problems we cause. We destroy big parts of the forest, the home of lots of species. It causes a huge amount of smoke, dust, fine particulates, and CO2. There are weeks people in Southeast Asia don't see the sun because of these burnings on Borneo and Sumatra. But not only people have problems with this smoke, also the original inhabitants of these forests, and they lose their homes. I show you some more examples. This is the Ganges River, your holy river here in India. And another example of polluting the waters, the plastic soup in the oceans. Surely you have heard about it. The loss of biodiversity is the third environmental problem. There are now about 1.8 million plant and animal species, mushrooms and various smaller species like insects and algae identified. It is estimated that there are between 10 and 100 million species in the world. So we think we know 2 to 20% of them. Many will die before we are able to identify them. Surely some of these species could be wonder drugs against now known diseases like cancer, not that cancer a disease, but malaria, all these things. Nature has, for lots of things, the solution, but we didn't find it yet. Human health is our fourth big environmental problem. The change in climate has an impact on us by asthma and cardiovascular disease, malaria, dengue, Lyme, allergies and asthma, cholera, diarrhea disease, mental health impact because of migration and civil conflicts, heat-related illness and death, injuries, etc. So, the four major environmental problems are these four. For us is the most visible climate change. G. Krishnamurti said, if you lose touch with nature, you lose touch with humanity. Are you sure we know all in our heart that this is true? Because I think we lost touch with nature. And it would be very, very sad if we would lose touch with humanity. But I would say it is clear we have lost this contact. Therefore we tend to look at animals for different types of production means. We don't see them anymore as our younger brothers, which in fact they are. Climate change is correlated with humanity, but how do we look to nature? Do we accept that we are part of this nature? Or are we still fighting against nature? Climate change causes lots of problems to us. I already showed these problems on the earlier slides. Now I want to show you why it has come so far. As you can see on this graph, the big change in greenhouse gases started around 150 to 200 years ago. In the meantime, the parts per million concentration is nearly over 400, coming from a more or less stable, a little bit less as 300. And with this increase in greenhouse gases, the Earth's temperature started to rise. And I will explain to you how that works. The greenhouse gases works as follows. Solar radiation comes to the Earth, partly it is reflected. It comes to the Earth, and partly it is reflected by the atmosphere around the Earth. But most of it is absorbed by the Earth's surface. This is good. Therefore, we can live on our planet without the greenhouse gas effect. And the Earth's atmosphere, it would be minus 18 degrees Celsius. That's not very nice. But it is average plus 15 degrees Celsius. So this greenhouse gas effect is important for us to live on this planet. And the infrared radiation coming from the Earth into the atmosphere, and this is increasingly blocked by the Earth's atmosphere. Therefore, it becomes steadily warmer. We have disturbed the balance between all the greenhouse gases. As you can see on this image, you see that parts of the Earth will get much warmer than others. The main problem area is Siberia. Where the permafrost is melting. With the melting of the permafrost, lots of methane is released, and methane is a much worse greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. Methane is roughly about 30 times more potent as a greenhouse gas as CO2. That means the warming of the planet is increasing rapidly. New scientific insights makes it clear that an increase above 1.5 degrees Celsius is dangerous because of uncontrollable effects, these effects. Therefore, the recent Paris Agreement stated that the increase of the Earth's temperature must not exceed further than preferably 1.5 degrees. With our current behavior, global warming is heading towards 4 degrees. Before the Paris Conference started, all the countries were requested to deliver their plans to combat the climate change. All these beautiful plans combined, however, lead to an increase of 2.7 degrees Celsius. Not even close to what is necessary to stay within the 1.5 and 2 degrees. And then we also have to look if these plans indeed will become a reality. There are still plans. We are still very much in the danger zone. Because it looks we are heading towards the 4 degrees, really. But, of course, we have a choice. We can do much more than you would think is possible. I come back later on that, because you and me can do something against it. First, I want to make the connection with spirituality. Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical movement, is attributed, perhaps reinvented of the Theosophical movement, I have to say after this morning, is attributed with having changed the face of the world, spirituality, largely by introducing Eastern spirituality into the Western world and teachings and explaining both the practical and metaphysical sides of esoteric philosophy in her writings, such as The Secret Doctrine, Isis Unveiled, The Key to Theosophy and The Voice of the Silence. It was Madame Blavatsky who first introduced the vitally important concepts of karma and reincarnation to the West, emphasizing that these are the two most important spiritual truths for humanity to clearly and accurately understand. With spirituality comes morality. Morality is doing what is right, regardless of what you are told. Religion is doing what you are told, regardless of what is right. We see that all over the world now. Spiritual people are not godless. We just happen to honor the God in all of us. Divinity is you as it is in me. It is just what you do with it. I will give you now some facts about the climate change, as I did before with the other facts. In Paris we agreed on 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius temperature rise. Climate change becomes dangerous when the Earth warms more than that 2 degrees. Because we don't know when the permafrost will melt on a big scale, and that process is going on already. We can expect more extreme weather, more hurricanes, more heat waves, rising sea levels, droughts, food shortage, and all the misery that follows as a consequence, which I already showed to you. To stay within these 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, we have to stop emitting greenhouse gases as soon as possible. That means 565 gigatons is the amount of CO2 we still can emit if we want to have an 80% chance that global warming remains below the 2 degrees. That's our remaining carbon budget. That means we have 2,795 gigatons. That's the amount of CO2 released when we all know fossil reserves are dug up and burned. You see, we have a big problem if we go on in the scale we do now. If we want to have a reasonable chance of keeping the temperature rise below the 2 degrees, then we have to leave 80% of the coal, half of all natural gas, and 1/3 of all the oil reserves in the ground. What can we do? It looks also far away from us. But the question is, what can we do ourselves? We are responsible for everything that happens to Gaia. It is totally group karma. But we really can do lots of things. It is really personal, you and me. One of the biggest problems are the fossil fuels. So if we can preserve these by saving energy, we make a good start. Here are some possibilities to save energy. Use your air conditioner wisely, or even better, don't use it. But buy energy efficient appliances. Choose energy efficient light, LED lighting. Avoid overloading your fridge. Switch off home appliances. Change to renewable energy. Change to renewable energy. That's an important one. Start using, instead of grey energy from coal, oil and gas, green energy from wind, sun and biomass. In Europe you can buy green energy, you get it as the same things, but you can buy it as green energy. I don't know if it is possible here, but we should look to if we have that possibility, we buy green energy. It's really important. So start using this green energy and join the movement of resistance to fossil fuels. Now I come to the lovely part. Think about animals as our younger brothers. You would never kill your younger brother to eat it. You would enjoy playing with them as this boy does. A cow is to love. A sheep is to cuddle. Teach your children and yourself that these animals are your brothers and sisters. Love them. Recently, a film, Cowspiracy, is produced. This film. For this film, the production team did a lot of scientific research. I need 2 hands now. I will show you some of the results of this research. It covers a mostly unknown subject, and people don't speak about it yet. But it is necessary to talk about it, especially we theosophists, trying always to become better persons as we are. Animal agriculture is the most destructive industry the planet is facing today. Are you aware of that? Here are the facts. You can't read it good, so I will tell it. Climate change, that means 51% of the global greenhouse gases emissions are caused by the animal agriculture. All transport over the whole world is only 13%. A vegan has a carbon footprint of 50% of a meat eater. Animal agriculture is responsible for 91% of the Amazon destruction. Livestock is responsible for 65% of nitrous oxide. Meat and dairy industry use 1/3 of Earth's fresh water. 1 hamburger is equivalent to 2 months showering, and not a cold shower. Biodiversity, 110 species are lost every day due to rainforest destruction. The waste from a farm with 2,500 dairy cows equals the waste of a city with 411,000 people. Livestock covers 45% of the Earth's total land. Land needed to feed 1 person 1 year for a vegan is that 674 square meter. For a meat eater is that 18 times more. That means 12,132 square meter. For every 1 kilogram fish caught is 5 kilogram by kill. What can we do about it? Well, a vegan produces 50% less CO2, uses 91% less fossil fuel for eating, uses 92% less water for eating, and 95% less land for eating compared to a meat eater. We can make the difference. We can make the difference. Simply by eating no or less animal products. Coming back to the Paris Agreement, we see that by eating as a vegan, and if the whole world would do that, eat as a vegan, we can nearly reach all the goals of that agreement. Tomorrow. We never spoke about the animal industry as the biggest polluter, but it is the biggest polluter. You don't need to read this. Here you see what the different countries expect to do for the global warming, or against the global warming. Reducing greenhouse gases with 26 to 28% from levels of 2005, the USA, or 60 to 65% in 2030, China, but if they stop with coal, they reach this already now. I want to change to what can we do now, personally. A lot. I think it's clear. We start with saving energy at home and in the office. We change to renewable energy as soon as possible, even when it will cost a little bit more. We change to a vegan diet, and we will save our planet. You see, it is personal. You and me, we have a big impact with our way of living. This is what Blavatsky meant when he says, and this is an important one, Theosophy is who Theosophy does. Not thinks, not studies, not feels, but does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mikil, for this wonderful presentation, which makes us all think about our behavior and what we can do ourselves. I would like to introduce to you now Dr. Nagesh. He studied at the Governmental Dental College, BDS, at Bangalore, which he completed in 1986. He completed MDS in 1992 for preventive and social dentistry. He has 65 national and international publications to his credit. Dr. Nagesh acquired his postgraduate diploma in health professions education offered by KLE University in collaboration with the University of Chicago in 2014. He has been an invited expert to the World Health Organization on 2 occasions. He served as oral health consultant for GlaxoSmithKline, a pharmaceutical company, for a field project in India. He has been a member of the Theosophical Society, Karnataka State Federation, for the last 15 years. Dr. Nagesh has been national speaker of the Indian section for the last 2 years. He has delivered many lectures on science, philosophy and spirituality from the Theosophical platform, and he is an ardent believer of the Theosophical principles. He has delivered lectures in the annual international conference and also in the South India conference at Adyar. Dr. Nagesh relates science, spirituality and philosophy in his lectures. His lecture today to us has a beautiful title, Unbiased Compassion Pours Out Universal Responsibility. I give you Dr. Nagesh.
So thank you for that nice introduction, Chairman. I like to begin this lecture by paying my gratitude and heartfelt thanks to the International President, Mr. Tim Boyd, and the International Secretary, and also the delegates who have come from far off places in order to enjoy the spiritual and the philosophical feast which is being provided regularly for last several years in these premises. When the International Secretary contacted me over telephone, inviting me for a lecture, I was intensely involved in a workshop on research methodology and statistical applications in health research. I took a bit of time and I requested her to send me the theme for this particular conference. She mailed me, and a couple of days after completing my workshop, when I went through the theme, I was very much impressed, basically because the topic chosen, that is compassion and universal responsibility, is a very apt subject in the current scenario. I accepted and titled it as Unbiased Compassion Pours Out Universal Responsibility. Let me come back to this title. It's a bit confusing title to begin with. You may ask me a question. What do you mean by unbiased compassion? Compassion is always unbiased. Only when it's unbiased, it is compassion. When it is biased, definitely it may be empathy or sympathy. We will come to this title, we will revisit it by the end of the lecture. I remember a very popular quote from Upanishads. Ekam sat vipra bahuda vadanti. The meaning of this quote is, all that exists is one, and the wise call it by many names. All that exists is one, or all is one, and one is all, is perhaps the tenet of a lot of spiritual orders in this world. That ultimate one, or the ultimate reality, which pervades the whole world and the whole universe, is called as Brahman in Vedanta. Brahman is the source of all the sources. Brahman is the cause of all the causes. Brahman is the rootless root of all. It is boundless, infinite, immutable, omnipotent, omnipresent, boundless. There are so many attributes we are trying to attach to that one and the only one reality, which is ever existent, although it is only one reality which is manifesting in millions of forms, we are unable to experience that one reality, basically because majority of the times our consciousness is at mundane level. It's the worldly consciousness, the lower level consciousness, or it is a lower self which is active in us majority of the times. Perhaps a lot many of us might not have experienced that higher self or the higher level of consciousness which provides an experience of oneness. Unless we experience that oneness or the only one reality, there is no way we can become compassionate. That's why oneness and compassion go together. They are hand in glove. Our theosophical society has the first object as universal brotherhood. Universal brotherhood becomes a reality more than an intellectual discourse only when we experience it. We do not experience because majority of the times we live a mundane life. I remember a very popular quote of Albert Einstein. He says, a problem created by a specific level of consciousness can never be solved by working at same level of consciousness. If worldly consciousness has created a sense of separation among us, we cannot solve it by remaining all the time at worldly level. We need to elevate. We need to raise. Only when we reach the higher layers and higher levels of consciousness, we experience oneness and compassion automatically dawns upon us. There is no point in intellectually understanding what is compassion, what is oneness, what is universal brotherhood, and how all these can give rise to universal responsibility. Intellectual understanding is nothing but mental acrobatics. Perhaps we cannot move too far if we keep rationalizing it and trying to understand it at the intellectual level. What we need is, we need to experience it. We need to carry that awareness of compassion. Once if we taste it, once if we experience it, perhaps it is liberation. It can change a person in toto, totally. Our great religious leaders, from Krishna to Christ, from Buddha to Muhammad, everybody preached compassion. The best thing is, they not only preached compassion, they lived compassion. They practically carried compassion towards whole life. It is said, life is sacred and all that is existing is life. In Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky time and again says, everything that is animate, there is nothing inanimate. Life exists in so-called inert materials like rocks, stones. There is no place where life does not exist. And all this life has come from that one source. Experiencing that one source or that oneness can practically take us to the path of compassion. In 2009, His Holiness Dalai Lama delivered a wonderful noble lecture in which he came out with a doctrine of universal responsibility. According to Dalai Lama, if awareness of oneness gets integrated with compassion, it automatically gives rise to universal responsibility. So the formula is simple. Again, it's intellectually we are trying to understand it. Oneness plus compassion is equal to universal responsibility. It's something like E is equal to MC square. We try to rationalize it. We try to understand it at the level where it is an equation. Although it's a simple equation which is given, we need to understand the depth of meaning in it and practically try to engage in sadhana and experience it. Compassion is nothing but selfless love which pours out on anyone and everyone without any discrimination. A love which does not show discrimination, a love which simply pours out to anything and everything, a love which integrates the whole, a love which provides a holistic view. It's not a love which is confined to my family. It's not a love which is confined to my body. It's not a love which is confined to my language, my caste, my creed, my sex, my tribe, my nation. Compassion is such a kind of love which does not carry a tinge of selfishness. It's ready to suffuse anything and everything. and it works for the benefit of all. It's beyond the boundaries. It doesn't have a limitation. Lord Buddha was such a compassionate being. I remind you, the plight of Jesus Christ on the cross. Although he was crucified, going through the terrible pain, misery, agony, torture, he was praying God to excuse those people who placed him in such a torture. No discrimination at all. Even on the cross, if a person can pardon those people who are punishing him, imagine how compassionate Christ was. When you are compassionate, when you experience oneness which go together, automatically your responsibility extends, expands. There is no other person. You know very well all that exists is one. Whom do you harm? If you harm anyone, it is as good that you are harming yourself, because you have experienced that everything is one. It's not intellectually you read some book and understood it. It is a transformation in the awareness which has taken place because of your sadhana. What comes into your awareness is something which stays with you permanently. What comes to you at the intellect level is bound to change. When awareness transforms, when you have experienced that oneness, when you become compassionate automatically, you start shouldering the responsibility. You never say what happened in US is not concerned to me. What happened in Syria is not concerned to me. What happened in Chennai does not bother me. Because there is nothing which is exclusive. Everything is inclusive. I thank my co-speaker for giving such a wonderful presentation which provided a tempo and a prelude for my presentation. He brought in the concept of nature. Nature is all inclusive. There is nothing which is exclusive of nature. And rightly he presented a slide of Jiddu Krishnamurti, where Krishnamurti says, if we lose touch with nature, it is as good that we are losing touch with humanity. Aptly said, rightly said. And nature is one holistic subject it is. Never nature is compartmentalized. Nature is an open system. Modern scientific research has explored nature very intensely, very immensely, and has come out with such wonderful theories which say that everything is interconnected, everything is intertwined, and everything is interdependent. Not only interconnected, interdependent and intertwined. Just 1 degree Celsius rise in the temperature of ocean in the coastal area of Peru gave rise to heavy showers in Chennai in the last month. You know the El Nino effect. Where is Peru? Where is Chennai? And how could mere rise of ocean temperature by 1 degree Celsius could give rise to such a heavy shower in Chennai, heavy showers in Chennai, which cause so much of havoc? Biologists have found that if millions of butterflies in Wyoming of US begin to flutter their wings in unison, it is a clear indication that monsoon is going to strike in couple of hours on the coastal line of Kerala. Where is Wyoming? Where is Kerala? What are these butterflies doing? How do they send signal about this? Very interesting. If one atom here changes its spin, the direction of spin, and the speed of spin here, it is paired with another atom or another particle which is perhaps billions of light years away from our planet, and that pair will immediately change its direction of spin and speed. Billions of light years away, this atom is paired with that atom. If something changes here, it is reciprocated by the atom so far. What does it mean? It means nature is an open system. Everything is interconnected and everything is interdependent. It's a beautiful system. It's nothing but God in manifestation. But we don't see the God. Right in front of us, the God we don't see. We keep searching for God everywhere. The moment we start seeing that one God, one reality, whatever you call, maybe Parabrahman, maybe Brahman, maybe Avyakta, maybe unmanifest, maybe Shunyata, maybe Buddhakaya, maybe state of singularity, maybe Jehovah, maybe Allah, maybe Father, whatever you want to call, you call. But experience. The moment you experience that oneness, there is compassion. The moment there is compassion, the universal responsibility automatically dawns upon us. No need that you have to cultivate it. If you want to cultivate oneness. Everything follows. That's what is our Theosophical Society's first objective, which says universal brotherhood, where love without any discrimination. As I was trying to contemplate on this topic very seriously, I remembered one document. This document was actually drafted by a Red Indian leader. Red Indians are the tribal people living in the interior forests of America. They are the aboriginals of America. They are the Native Americans. They live very close to nature and they have lived for several years. Not only they, their ancestors. They have shared their life with the forest, and forest is their mother, their father, their God, everything. In 1852, almost nearly 170 years back, the president of USA ordered those people to vacate that forest land because they wanted to occupy the land. They wanted to do something in that forest. They asked them to vacate, and the president said, "We are going to buy your land." This Red Indian leader, innocent, ignorant, so-called the uneducated, illiterate, uncivilized, a country dumpkin, he responds to that call of president, and with the help of a person, he drafts a letter and sends the letter to the President of US, which is considered to be the most profound, meaningful, insightful document on environment ever written in the history of mankind. And this person wonderfully writes the way they live their life in the forest. And there are a lot of messages to the so-called civilized people, so-called educated people, so-called intellectuals, researchers, scientists, artists, philosophers, craftsmen. A lot of messages. I have just picked few very, very touching statements from that particular draft. I consider them as nuggets because that is practical compassion. That is practical universal responsibility. I'll just share few of the statements before I wind up this lecture. Do I have a time of 5 or 10 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. Do I have 5-10 minutes time? Yes. Okay. Right at the outset, right in the beginning of the draft, the Chief Seattle is placing a question to the President of US. How can you buy or sell the land or sky? The idea is strange to us. Come on. How can you buy land? How can you buy sky? It does not belong to any person. We are all travelers. Can travelers own any immovable property? No, I am a mere traveler. I need to get in and I need to get out. When I get in, I have nothing. When I get out, I have nothing. So how do you own? The idea looks strange to us. It's very, very insightful. We do not own anything. So how can I sell? He's placing a query in front of the President of US. When I don't own the land, you say you want to buy it. How can I sell it? If we do not own the freshness of air and the sparkle of the water, how can I sell them? I don't have any authority. That means to say, whether it is land or whether it is sky or whether it is your river or whether it is your creek, whether it's your forest or whether it's your grassland, whether it's your mountain, it doesn't matter. Nothing we own, and when we don't own anything, we own everything. Beauty, that is the beauty. When we don't own anything, we own everything. Everything belongs to us. Because nothing belongs to us, so everything, it's paradoxical, but it is very insightful. Please try to understand it. The second question he places, if we sell you our land, will you teach your children what we have taught our children? That the earth is our mother, and what befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Okay, let us say we are going to sell our land to you. Will you teach your children that earth is their mother? They should treat earth as their mother. They can never abuse, misuse, and subject earth to violence. How much of atrocities we are committing on nature, on our sacred planet, the only lonely planet which has nourished, nurtured life. To our knowledge, there is no other planet so far detected to have harbored life. The only planet, sacred planet, lonely planet, beautiful planet, Mother Earth, the feminine god. But we are committing so much of atrocities. The third point, he says This we know. The Red Indian leader is saying, this we know. Earth does not belong to man, man belongs to earth. There is a great difference in the perspective. Man does not belong to earth, rather, earth belongs to man. This is the way we are living. But he says, earth does not belong to man. Earth belongs to several species of life here. It does not belong only to man. Earth does not belong to man. Rather, man belongs to earth. Earth can survive without man, but man cannot survive without earth. So the whole perspective is different. He is asking the so-called civilized people like us to teach your children that earth does not belong to you and you belong to earth. The next point, man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Man did not create the nature. He did not weave the web of life. The web of life has been carefully designed and carefully created in last billions of years by God. The nature took billions of years to create this beautiful web of life which is so delicately interconnected and interdependent. Man is just a strand in the web, one string in the web. What he does to the web, he does to himself. So, there is a profound message. How you treat nature really matters to such an extent your survival depends upon it. He says, we love this earth as a newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. For a newborn infant, mother's heartbeat is so dear. The only thing known to that infant is the heartbeat of the mother. So the Red Indian says, we love this earth as a newborn loves the heartbeat of its mother. So if we sell our land to you, love it as we have loved it. Care for it as we have cared for it. As we are a part of the land, you are also a part of the land. This earth is precious to us. It is also precious to you. One thing we know, in the letter so many times this particular phrase comes. One thing we know, there is only one God. No man, be the red man or white man, can be apart. We are all brothers. We are all brothers. He ends the draft with that statement, we are all brothers in 1852. This shows how much love, concern, affection, intimacy, connectedness these people dwelling in the interior forest carried towards nature and how respectfully they treated the nature. But what are we doing? Where are we heading? These are the words of wisdom of so-called an illiterate, uneducated, uncivilized tribal leader living in the forest. Was he uneducated? I am placing question to, myself. Was he uneducated? Was he uncivilized? Was he tribal? Or is it that we? I really wonder, and to me, the words of Chief Seattle are full of compassion and they exude universal responsibility. Please go through the document. I wanted to share it before I start the lecture. I believe and I hope that all of you have got a document. If not, you can feel free to ask me. Please go through it. And it's very, very touching. What are we doing to nature and in turn to ourselves? Are we at the brink of extinction, as my co-speaker said? Are we at the brink of extinction? Is Gaia dying? Gaia means sacred earth. Is our planet dying? Have we reached the point of no return? Have we committed so much of atrocities and polluted the earth to such an extent that there is no way that we can return back? Is our only planet doomed to go without life in few decades or few centuries? Or is there still a chance to save our planet and Mother Nature? Are we heading towards a breakthrough or a breakdown? If it is a breakthrough, we learn lessons. Humanity evolves one step ahead and the nature springs back to its grandeur. If we don't learn lesson, it is a breakdown. Not only human life, we are going to wipe off the whole life from the face of this beautiful planet. And we may translate this planet into a massive graveyard. As rightly said by my co-speaker, it is just 1 minute back industrialization started. 1 minute back we started industrialization and we have taken the earth to such a stage where we are talking so much about global warming, greenhouse effect, so much of destruction, calamities. Imagine if industrialization flourishes like this in future, what is the cost that we are supposed to pay? Enough of wheels, enough of wires, enough of machines, enough of mechanics. We need to go back to nature. We need to heed to the call of nature. If otherwise, nature has its own way to solve this problem, and in the course, the whole life may have to exit from this planet. In my view, in my contemplation, I feel the words of the Chief Seattle is speaking practical compassion, practical oneness, and that person is sharing what you call shouldering and sharing that universal responsibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nagesh, for these inspiring words. It is now 4:25, and we invite you back here at 5 o'clock when our President will speak upon reversing the flow, a conscious choice. Thank you.
to be seen.
I'm really disappointed about this roof, the way that they've messed around with it. You know, to the casual eye that doesn't really look up, it's all okay, but it's not.
So it's supposed to be higher eventually when it's redone.
Well, not so much, but it's supposed to be stretched tighter and aligned.
Yes, I just wanted to know if it looks stretched. Is that strip of fabric underneath there? That's temporary.
That's just because, you know, usually we try to plan these things. Plan B was a horrible. And then after the
Good evening, everyone. Before we commence this evening, do you understand my sign language? If you have a mobile phone, please either turn it off or put it on silent mode. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, it is a very real pleasure this evening for me to formally introduce to you our respected President, Mr. Tim Boyd. I'm going to share with you, first of all, some biographical information about him. Mr. Tim Boyd has been serving as International President of the Theosophical Society Adyar since April of 2014. He was born in New York City and lived for 17 years there until he left to attend Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. From there, he transferred to the University of Chicago, where he was an honours graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Affairs. He joined the Theosophical Society in America in 1974. Together with Bill Lawrence, a TS member and mentor, and others, he founded a theosophical spiritual community. This was in Chicago's inner city. The group held classes on the ageless wisdom, meditation, and healing. They worked with at-risk and disadvantaged youth, transformed vacant lots into award-winning organic food gardens. It sounds like an amazing project. And placed beehives on the roofs of local buildings. The group formed a business, Royal Associates, that initially focused on reclaiming and renovating deteriorating residential buildings in their area, creating housing for low and middle income families. Their work helped to stabilise neighbourhoods through the training and employment of local youth and the creation of affordable homes for area residents. What a project. In 1988, Tim became a national lecturer for the TS in America. From 1996 until 2000, he worked in hospice services as a volunteer in a team that involved doctors, social workers, and nurses. Then, in 2007, he became the president of the Theosophical Order of Service, TOS USA, and in 2011 was elected president of the Theosophical Society in America. Tim's involvement with the Theosophical Order of Service and the Kushul Orphanage in Tibet led to an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, which resulted in the TS in America sponsoring his visit to Chicago in July of 2011, a two-day event attended by 10,000 people. The event raised $400,000, all of which was donated to educational projects aiding Tibetan communities worldwide. In 2014, Tim was re-elected as the president of the TS in America and also elected as president of the Theosophical Society. He currently shares his time between the headquarters of the TS here in Chennai, India, and the Olcott TS National Headquarters in Wheaton, Illinois, USA. And of course, he lives there with his wife Lily, who we have the pleasure to have here with us at the convention, of course, and his daughter Angelique. This evening, Tim is going to speak to us about reversing the flow, a conscious choice. I now invite him to give his address.
So, I'd like to thank Linda for the introduction. Thank her for reminding me of who they say I am. It's always interesting to recount those things and relive some of those memories as you hear them. This evening I'm going to be doing something that we're all familiar with. I'm going to be speaking. What I'd like to do prior to me subjecting you to my voice is just to allow us just a moment where we can actually get a sense of the place where we're sitting now. It's a very special place. It's a very special atmosphere, unlike any. There are sounds that are going on around us that are not human-made. There is a sense of a certain vibrancy that flows through this place. If we're sufficiently still, we can also become aware of a sense of a higher presence. That our activity together has invited to this place and to this time. It's a wonderful moment for us to be together, regardless of the words that may be said. During our time together, we've heard a lot of things, a lot of ideas, a lot of very profound ideas have been addressed related to our theme of compassion and universal responsibility. Although, like the Chinese saying that says, talk does not cook rice, it's good to hear. It's very good to hear, because these words are not idle, and the people who have had a chance to share with us have given a certain life to these ideas, to the sense that certainly it's something that has been an upliftment for us, and it goes out from here. I'm going to be doing a little bit more of the same. Those of you who were not here for the previous talk to this, I recommend that you see it online, because two speakers, both exceedingly dynamic men, with a very strong message that they brought, and it relates most specifically to this aspect of the choices that we make. The choices we are making, and the possibility to perhaps choose differently. So in many ways, these are the subjects that I'd like to address during our brief time here together tonight. I'm going to go over some things, and probably, if I'm speaking correctly, I will not tell you anything that you do not already know. That's not a sign of my limitation or of your great advancement. It's a sign of the fact that we all share certain things that are very much in common together. My purpose here is to simply remind us for a specific purpose. So, one of the things I'd like to talk about, all of us are aware, there is this very universal, basic, obvious idea that we all take part in, these cycles that we witness in every aspect of life. Everywhere we go, everywhere we look, things are moving in cycles. We know it. It's one of the propositions within our theosophical canon. Such simple things as day and night, each breath that flows in, each breath that flows out, we're very much aware of, the change of seasons. In our theosophical understanding, we also think in terms of Manvantara and Pralaya, the outbreathing and the inbreathing. Many large cycles, but I'd like to speak about one that is specific to our journey, specific to the journey of unfoldment which we are all engaged in, and that speaks directly to this idea of reversing the flow. And I'll be able to talk more about that as we go a little bit further in. The cycle that I'm speaking about is this very fundamental cycle of the soul's unfoldment that we witness in all of our literature and our study of this cycle of outgoing and return. The journey outward into manifestation and the return. The outgoing portion is depicted in stories around the world. Every spiritual tradition really bases itself on these stories of these cycles as they relate to grand things and as they relate to us individually. Such things as the Ramayana talks about this outward journey. Typical sort of description of this story would involve someone, the soul, leaving its home, leaving its kingdom, and going to some far land. In that far land, there is an experience that takes place where there is a forgetfulness of the glories of their kingdom, living as the people live in that distant land, but then there comes a time when at a certain point the soul remembers. And this starts a completely new aspect of this cycle, which we will talk about. The stories that depict this quite vividly are such stories as the Mahabharata, where the Pandava clan loses their heredity and has to fight and wander and travel. The Ramayana. And actually we see it depicted in the lives of great people. The Buddha left his kingdom, left his princely life in order to make this journey toward enlightenment. H.P. Blavatsky, at age 17, she left home. A single woman, 17 years old, left home in search of a deeper wisdom that took her for traveling around the world for the remaining 43 years of her life. So this journey is one that we're familiar with. Specific story that I'll share with you, and it's one you're probably familiar with as well, is this, again, spiritual story that is embedded in the Western spiritual tradition. The story of this prodigal son is an excellent depiction of this outgoing and return. The way that story goes, for those of you who are less familiar with Western spirituality, there is a son of a very great man who one day decides he's going to leave home because he wants to go and he wants to travel. And he requests and receives all of his riches, which he then takes with him on this journey to this far land. And of course, along the way, the riches he has been given gradually fall away from him. In a sense, he squanders them in this journey into this far land of material involvement, the journey of the soul. At a certain point, he finds himself far, far from home, having to live the life, and a difficult life, of the people in that land, having to take the lowest sort of employment to be able to even eat. You know, in that particular culture, the lowest employment possible was to be the one who had to feed the swine. And that was the job that the son of this great one was living. In that particular story, a famine comes upon the land. The son finds himself starving, lacking in spiritual nutrition. And he says to himself, I am so hungry that I would even eat the food that I'm feeding the swine. His state had gone that low. But this really is the critical point in this story, and this is the critical point for you and for me as well. Because what happens in that story depicts the process that we are engaged in actually now. Because this point arrives, this desperate moment at which the son remembers. Suddenly, back into his memory comes a remembrance of his previous estate. That he is, in fact, the child of divinity. And that the way that he is living his life, the way that he is conducting himself, is something that is completely apart from his true nature. This is the critical point. Because at that point begins this journey of return. The outgoing journey, the journey of return. In the theosophical writings, the three fundamental propositions, this cycle of outgoing and return is spoken of, and both aspects of this cycle are addressed. In that third proposition, it is said that there is an obligatory pilgrimage for every soul. Everybody's got to make this journey. It's not a matter of choice that this journey is made. Every soul makes this journey through the cycle of incarnation. But there is a certain guiding principle that takes place in the first half of this journey. This outgoing journey is dictated by what is said in that third proposition. It's described as the individuality is acquired first through natural impulse. In other words, on this outgoing portion of this journey that we are taking, it is the impelling force of nature that drives us in the various directions that we are driven. It's not a matter of a conscious choice. It's a matter of reacting to the effects and the drives of nature. So during this part of the journey, we are impelled by nature. Impelled by nature, we find ourselves dividing the world in certain ways that we're very familiar with. We divide the world into that which is pleasurable to us, that which causes us pain, and then all of the rest is neutral. And the way the consciousness functions, we find ourselves grabbing for the pleasurable and resisting that which causes pain. At the feet of the Master, this condition of mind is spoken to very tersely in speaking about desirable. All right. Thank you for the water break. It was needed. But this habit of mine, of never really experiencing the world for what it is, because it's completely divided into what we like and what we don't, what we reach for and what we push away. It's a habit of mind. Desirelessness is what is spoken of as the antidote to that habit of mind. But the key thing that I'm trying to describe here is that there is an all-important point for the individual that we arrive at, and it's this point of awakening. I'd like for you to visualize the idea of if someone were to take an arrow and shoot it into the air. what it is that happens describes what's happening with us. An arrow going into the air launches itself. There's a certain force that drives it, and at a certain point, that force diminishes. It slows, it stops, and then it begins its journey back to the ground from which it came. With us, this process, in the occult teachings, they speak about the possibility for us to hasten this unfoldment which will benefit us and which will also benefit the world in which we live, that it can be hastened. The point at which this hastening takes place is the point which we as a human family find ourselves now. Certainly individually, there are always those who are ahead of the curve. This is where this comes from. But as this propulsive motion, attaching us, moving us ever more deeply into an association with materiality and all that it brings, as that begins to slow, for the very first time, we have the opportunity for genuine choice, not reaction to nature. We have the chance to consciously make choices. In that third proposition of the secret doctrine of the three fundamental propositions, this is spoken of as the point that is reached where we guide our unfoldment through self-induced and self-devised efforts. We take control. We exercise the consciousness that has grown within us during the course of this long flight into a material existence, now to determine the best way, the fastest way, the most expeditious way for all beings to effect this journey home. And this is where we find ourselves now. If we didn't find ourselves in this position, something like theosophy would be meaningless to us. But we do. And so it becomes very important now. This whole process of return is the critical moment in this entire story. On this journey homeward, the one thing that we are involved with in our choices, we are continually choosing to, as the Oracle of Delphi, it said above the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself. The process becomes one of knowing ourselves ever more deeply. And the one thing that has come across through this convention, the point that everyone comes back to again and again and again, is that in order to know ourselves, this is not an individual process. The self, removed from the greater reality within which it exists, is meaningless and illusory. The only self that really has meaning is that one which finds itself linked inextricably to this greater life within which all things live and move and have their being. That is what becomes the meaning of the self and the meaning of oneness. Oneness can be experienced in a number of ways. Perhaps we'll talk about that. Just to give you an example, one which I find myself using these days. If you were to take the example of this human body, within the human body, my understanding is that there are multiple trillions of individual lives, cells, that comprise the body. Every one of us who is sitting here has trillions of individual living organisms making up this body. And yet somehow or another we call this whole thing I. But if we were to take the example of one of those cells, any one of them,
a cell in the stomach lining, a cell in the lung, and to ask ourselves, what is it that this cell, what is it that motivates this single organism during the course of its day-to-day living? Probably it would not care a great deal about what is being said at a convention for the Theosophical Society. Probably it would not have much regard for the bills that you must pay or the books that you choose to read. The basic requirement for this individual cell would be that it has a climate that is hospitable, the acid balance is correct, that it has sufficient nutrition, and that it is able to reproduce. Simple sorts of desires, not even desires at the level of a cell. But in our imaginations, we can suppose. Suppose that among these trillions of cells, one of those cells gets this idea that something bigger is going on here. You know, I'm being fed, but there's something more going on. You know, when somebody gets a fever, my climate changes. And suppose this cell generated the idea that I want to know what it is. I want to know more about this greater life within which I live and move. This would be an example of a cell, a spiritualized cell. No possibility of comprehending the enormity of the body within which it resides. But I give you that example because really this is this condition we find ourselves in. We find ourselves wondering. We find ourselves having vague sorts of experiences related to this greater life. And at a certain point we find ourselves committing to a depth of knowledge and committing to try to bring others in that direction. Interesting fact. This is something I just recently became aware of. The human body is filled with all sorts of other types of organisms besides human cells. Bacteria. Bacteria are on the skin, bacteria are in the gut, they inhabit the body. The thing I did not know was that in terms of the number of cells, there are 10 times more bacteria inhabiting the human body than human cells. Actually, we're more bacteriological than we are human. Maybe that explains why we act the way we do. But there are many, many things going on within us. I had a good friend used to talk about the spiritual composition of the human being. We know from the teachings we have been exposed to that the human being is described as something which is in fact complex. We are a complex of 3 separate evolutionary streams which somehow meet, and at that point we have this human project that begins. You have the spiritual stream, you have the intellectual stream, you have the physical stream. You know, when asked to describe what is a human being, HPB's response was it is highest spirit and lowest matter linked by mind. So those things sound simple enough because we tend to relate everything to ourselves. Highest spirit within me, lowest matter, my body, the mind. But she was talking about something much more than that. That not only are these streams active within us, but there are ranges of the most exalted sorts of intelligences that take part in this project. That each one of us is the inhabitant of the highest dhyani chohans as well as the lowest sorts of elementals. We are very complex. The unity that we seek to embrace is not without its own complexity. A friend of mine gave the example to try and make this sort of thing more clear. He gave the example of an airport. So when we describe an airport,
it's more than just the physical building and the planes. That basically there are people who don't fly airplanes who come there every single day to clean the floors. There's a whole other group of people that come there to operate the shops. There are pilots that walk through there to take people to other destinations. There are people who are in this airport meeting, speaking next to each other, languages that each other doesn't understand, preparing for the flight that they're going to take. But all of these things come together in this place. Similarly for us as humans, this complexity, the understanding of this is part of what is involved in this human project. In Light on the Path, we are advised to inquire of the earth, the air, and the water, of the secrets that it holds for you. To look within, to examine these various streams, and to ask of what are those secrets that these various high intelligences that are operating as this human project, what's the secret that they have for us? Ask of the holy ones, inquire of the holy ones of the earth, the secrets they have. Inquire of the inmost, of the one, for the final secret which has always held for you. This is the process. And this is this process that we engage in when we reach this stage where we can actually choose consciously. This stage that we find ourselves in now. Give you an example of something. A number of years ago, in 1980, there was a major cataclysmic sort of event that took place on the west coast of the United States. Those of you who were alive then and old enough to watch the news probably saw it. It was a massive eruption of a volcano in the state of Washington, Mount St. Helens. And it was something where it was unusual because scientists well in advance knew that this volcano was getting ready to blow. They had seen the north slope of the volcano bulging out. Earthquakes were starting to happen with some regularity underneath it. All of this let them know that there was activity happening under the ground. Something was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. On a day in May, suddenly they had an earthquake. The earthquake caused part of the face of the mountain to drop away, exposing the red-hot lava underneath, causing it to explode. And so then this eruption took place. It was remarkable. I mean, it was all captured in film, but it was something that absolutely devastated the entire surroundings. No living thing survived for miles and miles and miles around. Everything died. About 3 or 4 years after the earthquake, after the volcano happened, I was on a plane. I was going out to the northwest, and the pilot flew us over Mount St. Helens. And I had a window seat, and I looked out. And quite honestly, I have never then and never since seen anything like it. Really, in many ways, it was as if I was looking down on the face of the moon. There was no sign of life anywhere. Everything was gray or black. There was a whole forest that had been in existence around the volcano. 80-foot tall pine trees. And what you saw was just amazing, because from the force of the blast, every single one of those trees was laid down with its roots pointing toward the source of this blast. For miles and miles and miles, 80-foot trees just laid down like a child had thrown toothpicks. Just the most incredible display of natural power and the ability to devastate. So that's what I saw then. About 10 years later, again I found myself on a plane. again heading toward the northwest, and again the pilot took us over Mount St. Helens. With the memory of what I had seen, I looked down again to see what the sight would hold for me this time. This time, on looking down, what I saw was something vastly different. Although you could still see the lines of some of these trees underneath, the ground below had sprung to life. Everywhere you looked, it was verdant, lush green life. Animals had come back in ways that they had never been before. They were able to flourish. The soil that had been regenerated by this volcanic ash was more productive than it had ever been. So out of this wasteland, this utter devastation, this new life was springing up abundantly. It was a remarkable sight, but it also set me in, it made me know something. Sometimes we find ourselves faced with certain situations in our lives as individuals and in our lives as a human family. In part, some of the discussion of the earlier talk that preceded this one pointed to some of the very severe sorts of issues that we have facing us now as a human family. And the fact that now, as always, there are choices that we can make. If we are sufficiently present, if we are sufficiently conscious, and if we are sufficiently willing to dare to make those choices. In the occult life, there is said to be this one saying that dictates our behavior, that we must know, to will, to dare, and to be silent. With being silent, of course, the hardest of them all, as our cell phones have taught us. To know, to will, to dare. At a certain point, we know. Nobody has to tell us that at this point in the history of humanity, that we have built up a situation from our own behavior that is affecting the planet in very, very serious ways. Those of you who were here 4 weeks ago, when water was everywhere and electricity was missing and all of the trappings of modern, civilized, wonderful, elevated human progress slipped away, you know. But these are situations that are self-created. I often find myself going back, is that something that can be addressed? Is that something that even relates to the spiritual path? I think you know the answer. There are choices that need to be made. One of the things that I do witness, whether it's on a personal level or whether it's on the level of the broad progress of humanity, whenever we find times of devastation, somehow there is some sort of response that takes place. Not a reaction, a response. World War II, all of the millions of lives that were lost in that war, all of the demonstrations of not only inequality, but actual hatred toward other human beings and groups of human beings. We come out of this cataclysm with a devastated world. Out of that came this beautiful document that is become the standard that nations must abide by, this universal declaration of human rights. It's a wonderful document. In fact, it's wonderful to me because the language of it is almost identical to the language of the first object of the Theosophical Society. That these distinctions, these discriminations, these hatreds based on race, religion, gender, caste, sexual preference, whatever it is, are artificial and are counterproductive to human unfoldment, because we unfold as one. So that comes out of this potential for a greatness that exceeds any of our individual capacity. And we witness it. So now we find ourselves again at one of these moments of choice. As a theosophical society, we attempt to connect ourselves to certain eternal truths, universally shared. And it's not just for the good that they do us, but they are powerful in ways that influence entire cultures, unseen. Consciousness is the abiding force wherever we are. So we have this. As a theosophical society, obviously we work on ourselves, we work on our choices, but there's more for us. In the ageless wisdom tradition, there is this concept. The word that is used to describe this concept is upadhi. Really, it means a vehicle. And upadhi is a vehicle that enables the expression of something higher. Something higher can be expressed through this lower vehicle that is capable of functioning on a different level. So, mind is the upadhi for spiritual intuition or buddhi. Substance is the upadhi, the vehicle for spirit. Compassion, which is the law of laws, which is the nature of our being, which is connected to this experience of oneness, which we have all been speaking about. Compassion, too, requires its vehicle. What is the vehicle of compassion in this world? Earlier today we had the question, why are we compassionate? And, for me, the more important question was to rephrase it, to ask, why are we not compassionate? Why are we compassionate? What is the vehicle for compassion? And again, we come back to the theme of this conference. Compassion and universal responsibility. The vehicle for compassion is that mind, that consciousness which finds itself responsible. To phrase it differently, which finds itself able to respond. This is something we can determine. This is something that hopefully our process of approach to the spiritual life we have been engaged in. To the point that we become able to respond. We become response-able. And then we can really choose. Responsibility is the flowering of something. It's the flowering of all of the work that we have done in this life, in past lives, that bring us to the capacity to respond. The way things seem to work, it seems to be something that's borne out more and more with time. With the advances in science, with the advances in our own understandings. Quantum physics. There is this concept of quantum leap. It seems like an idea that is purely scientific, but it's something we witness in life regularly. The idea being that for the electron that circles the nucleus of an atom, a certain amount of energy gets invested in that electron, and suddenly, very suddenly, it moves to a completely new orbit. It doesn't pass between the ground that separates it from the new orbit. It moves suddenly, utterly, and completely to a new orbit. We've witnessed this. Not under an electron microscope. We've witnessed this in such things as the fall of the Berlin Wall,
which was not anticipated by anyone. One day, people went to sleep, the wall was there. The next day, people woke up, and the wall was coming down, block by block, but immediately. The inner work of the focused consciousness, first of a few, has very far-reaching effects. And everything, all of these cycles that we spoke of, every single one of them has its time. And when its time arises, it becomes something that becomes an irresistible force. The role for us is to, again, choose, responsibly choose, to hasten its arrival. This will happen in many ways. Obviously, it will happen in the sense of respect for the planet, necessary. Without it, we're homeless. It will happen in that way, and it will happen in other ways. So we make these choices, we bring this thing into being. Where I come from, unlike here in Chennai, this time of year, there's snow on the ground. But every winter, without fail, the winter turns to spring. When that moment arrives, whether there be snow on the ground and a nip of frost in the air or not, you will find flowers making their way up through the snow. It's irresistible when the time for that cycle is correct. We participate in those cycles. Inwardly, if we have been doing our work in the proper way, we sense this. We sense the turning of a time. This time is moving into another. Subtly at first, but suddenly. Very much, I find myself traveling the world quite a bit these days. And wherever I go, I find myself in the presence of people like us. People who feel that there is value in the investment in cultivation of consciousness. It may be theosophists, it may be other people, but people of consciousness. All around the world, people like us find themselves laboring in these fields, wondering when and how long. And feeling somewhat separate and alone. One of the things that I can say I witness without doubt is, and it's something that you will not find if you're watching the news. They say for the news, the pattern for what's reported on the news is if it bleeds, it leads. If it's something that has blood, it's the first thing that's going to come on the news. Why? Because you'll watch it. And you'll get worried. And that'll drive you to buy the next product that comes up on the commercials to kind of satisfy this uncomfortable, anxious feeling. If it bleeds, it leads. That's the conventional mentality. What does not get reported on the news is the movement of consciousness that is taking place in the world today, where all around the world, small groups of people are finding their way to other small groups of people, and this linkage is taking place. It's already done, in fact. But when will be the time that it rises to the top? Hopefully it'll be in our time. Definitely it will be soon. So these are the sorts of patterns I ask you to look toward. And these are the sorts of things that I ask you to lend your attention to when we do leave from this place. Compassion, universal responsibility. Everyone is in a position at this stage of development to be responsible, to choose, and to choose wisely. So if nothing else comes from this conference, and many things will, maintain those thoughts.
link ourselves with that compassion which is our genuine nature, our whole enemy in life. We don't have enemies that are named by nationalities. There is no nationality that is our enemy, but we do have enemies. And those enemies that you can find and that you can point to are those selfish thoughts that wall you off from the experience of the free flow of love and compassion to the person in front of you. That's an enemy, because it imprisons you. It locks you up tight. And is also one that you have complete control over if you ever believe that you are the one who has control. If you can convince yourself of that, then the rest is easy. So again, as Theosophus, Madame Blavatsky once said that there are two voices that she listens to and obeys without question. The first voice was the voice of her own higher self, to which she was sufficiently connected to be able to know when it spoke. The second voice was the voice of her master. She was not the only one. Her access to those voices was not unique. Because it's yours, it's mine, if you'd ask for it, if you would listen, if you would hear and know what is said, if you would shape yourself in such a way that you would will to do what it is that you know, if you would dare to make those movements in this world that the flow that is moving is the one that has to be resisted. That's what we're reversing. It's hard going at first, but the fact of the matter is it takes enormous effort to become effortless. Enormous effort in the beginning, effortless. It's effortless behavior once it becomes a pattern for us. Know it, make it a part of your will, dare to take that step, and also know you're not stepping alone. You may not see them around you, but you're not stepping alone. And be silent. Be silent. We started off with some silence. This part of the cycle has come around once more. Be silent and know what it is that is just that close to your ear, waiting to be heard. Thank you all. Thank you.
What a wonderful talk as the final public talk for this International Convention of the Theosophical Society. Our President has taken us on a journey which talks about the great cycles in nature and how we can somehow become part of those more natural cycles which are covered up in many ways by the world today. Some of the images were very striking, such as the image of the volcano, the arrows shooting up into the air, and so forth. But I think most of all, he has really underscored the whole theme of this convention and the necessity for compassion and a sense of universal responsibility. I would like to thank, on behalf of all of you, both here and elsewhere in the world, I would like to thank our President very much indeed for a most inspiring talk, and I think it is evident what a fine theosophist he is. Thank you. Session This session is closed, but just a reminder that the next session will be here this evening at 7:30 p.m. We are in for a very real treat from Kalakshetra this evening with some classical Indian dancing. Thank you.